If you've been scrolling through endless lists of UPS units, watching video after video trying to decide whether you need a rack mount beast or a simple desktop backup, and you're still not sure which one actually makes sense for your setup, this review is going to clear that up. I've spent the last few weeks pulling apart the specs, reading the fine print, and looking at what real-world users are saying about the APC Smart UPS 1500 VA, because the last thing you want is to spend a few $100s on a backup that either won't keep your servers alive long enough or sits idle gathering dust. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the kind of environment where this UPS really shines. Imagine you run a small office with a couple of network switches, a NAS for backups, and a workstation that handles your accounting software. Power spikes, brownouts, or a short outage are enough to corrupt files or bring your whole workflow to a halt. The APC Smart UPS 1500 VA delivers a pure sine wave output, which means the power it supplies looks exactly like utility power to sensitive equipment. That matters because many modern PCs and networking gear actually detect the shape of the wave. A modified sine can cause odd hiccups or even trigger alarms in some UPS-aware devices. With this unit you get a clean, 1200-watt, 1500 VA buffer that's strong enough to keep a typical small office server rack running for roughly 10 to 15 minutes under a moderate load, enough time to either finish a critical save or switch to a generator. Now, who should actually buy this thing? If you've already outgrown a cheap 500 VA desktop UPS and you've started stacking equipment in a 2U rack, this is the logical next step. The included rail kit makes mounting straightforward, and the unit can also be placed on the floor as a tower if you don't have a rack yet. It's also a solid choice for home lab enthusiasts who run a couple of virtual machines, a small firewall, and maybe a homebrew media server. The extended run option is a neat add-in. You can plug a secondary battery pack to double your backup time, which is a lifesaver if you live in an area with frequent, longer outages. On the flip side, if you're just looking to protect a single desktop PC or a basic home router, you're probably overpaying for capacity you'll never use. The form factor and price tag make more sense when you have at least a few devices drawing power simultaneously. Let's walk through a day-in-the-life scenario. I set the unit up behind a rack that houses a 24-port switch, a 2-bay NAS, and a mini server running a few Docker containers. After wiring everything into the UPS's multiple outlets, some with battery backup, others with just surge protection, I configured the network management card. This card gives you a web interface you can reach from any computer on the LAN, so you can see the load, battery health, and estimated runtime at a glance. The first time the power flickered during a storm, the UPS kicked in instantly, the lights on the front panel turned amber, the audible alarm sounded, and the connected devices kept humming without interruption. The web UI showed that the load was sitting at about 650 watts, and the estimated runtime was 13 minutes. I had just enough time to shut down the Docker containers gracefully and let the NAS finish its current backup cycle. Without the UPS, that sudden loss would have corrupted the backup and forced a full rebuild later. Of course, no product is perfect, and there are a few trade-offs to keep in mind. The Smart UPS 1500 VA is a line interactive unit, which means it does a decent job of correcting minor sags and surges before the battery ever has to kick in. However, it's not a true double conversion online UPS, so in the rare case of extremely noisy power like heavy industrial equipment nearby, you might still see a brief dip before the battery takes over. In practice, for most office or home lab settings that's a non-issue, but it's something to consider if you're in a factory environment. Another point is the weight and size. At roughly 50 pounds and a full 2U height, it's not something you can just toss onto a desk. Installation requires a bit of planning, especially if you need to route the power cable through a rack's rear panel. Finally, the UPS's battery will naturally degrade over time. APC quotes about 3 to 5 years of optimal performance, so you should budget for a battery replacement down the line if you intend to keep the unit for the long haul. When it comes to value, the headline specs 1500 VA, pure sine wave, network management are all there, but the real money saver is the extended run option and the ability to monitor everything remotely. Without the network card, you'd be left guessing about battery health and load, which often leads to premature replacement or surprise failures. The fact that the card is included means you get the full feature set straight.